Welcome to Bonus Bytes, a special mini episode of the Triple D podcast. These bite-sized episodes are packed with information about disability benefits, disability news, and answers to your burning questions. Get ready to take a bite of what's going on this week. Here's your host, Michael Weiner.
Welcome to another episode of Bonus Bytes, the Triple D podcast. This is the stern-faced Andrew November, along with Michael Weiner here. Boy, Trump edition. That's what we're calling this. This is the Trump edition. We are a little more than a week into Trump 2, and the world feels like a much different place than it did last week. I don't know how many of the things that have actually happened in the last week are actually going to have an impact on our clients, but what it feels like is just hysteria and confusion.
It is certainly confusion more than anything else. We've never faced power from the executive branch this way, where they're interfering with multiple agencies, and the agencies don't know how to run a program like Social Security that affects millions of people with confusion like this. Yesterday, every federal employee, including Social Security employees, received an email that appeared to say that they would be bought out, early retirement, which is not uncommon.
Early out, yep.
The federal government's done it before. Businesses do it all the time, but that's not what it was. They were just being asked to work for the next 9 months and then resign, but who knows whether the administration would have paid them the full time. So that's why it's causing all this confusion. So yeah, I think that's why I refused to smile at the beginning of the podcast, which was kind of hard because you were smiling at me, and it's hard not to smile back, but I am really angry. Don't let my smile fool you. This is anger.
Tell me why you're angry.
I'm angry because...
By the way, this is no longer Bonus Bytes. Take this down. This is Andrew's talk therapy session recorded live.
Yes.
For everybody to watch. Tell me what's wrong, Andrew.
Because there's zero nuance to anything they're doing. They've marched into this administration that we just need to cut. Government spending is out of control. And whether that is a valid point is something that should be discussed, but you can't come in there and just immediately freeze all federal funding, which we've just learned 41 minutes ago was rescinded by the White House. So yes, that gives me encouragement because I don't want to turn this into a super political podcast, but what I'll say is when Trump was elected in 2016, the resistance was vocal. The very next day after the inauguration, there was the, 500,000 woman march in D.C. Like the resistance was palpable. I got invited to all these Facebook groups for being lawyers just ready to fight, ready to take a case. This time around, it almost feels like we've just accepted it. That one half of the country is just resigned to that this is how it is. And that's why I think so many of these executive orders came out in the past week, because they're just taking control. They're showing they're in charge, but we've seen that a little resistance goes a long way. I mean, the fact that Trump's administration rescinded that executive order freezing funding shows that people have to stand up.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that you're just nervous about how cavalier it all feels. It's not even that necessarily that we shouldn't be addressing things like waste. It's just the solutions seem too quick, not necessarily thought through. The communication has been poor, and that's going to create more problems and more confusion.
100%. And these are problems that people will feel. A lot of people who, don't engage in federal level politics be like, it doesn't affect me. Well, one, it always does, and I can give you 10 examples of how things that happen in the district courts or on the congressional level do affect your life. This is absolutely going to affect everyday lives for every American who have a pending application for disability, who need food assistance, things like that can just stop so quickly by an executive order that's really never been tested in a court of law.
Now let's kind of walk through this history just from the last, we'll call it 36 hours. So there was an executive order that went out, which scared the living, out of, basically all of America, because it seemed like a sweeping executive order that said, the government and its agencies, all federal agencies, need to immediately pause funding on grants to anything that doesn't fit with the President Trump agenda. The only exceptions, and it's important that we say this right here, the only exception that was in that initial executive order was Social Security and Medicare, which are the two things that, at least on their face, our clients care about the most. But all the ancillary programs that kind of help our clients get through the process, food stamps, SNAP benefits, Section 8 housing, Medicaid, all these other, childhood aftercare programs. It was silent on that, which completely scared the country because, wait a minute, there's not going to be funding anymore for food stamps. The Medicaid website crashed. And now then, shortly after that, the administration walked it back and said, listen, the only programs that we're targeting are ones that, aren't consistent with DEI initiatives or, the immigration policies of the administration. But it does seem like beyond that, they at least kind of clarified what they meant. But then, of course, now what you were saying 41 minutes ago, it's probably 44 minutes now, they completely stalled.
They rescinded
the entire executive order.
No, you're exactly right. I will change one word. You said that the Medicaid page crashed. I don't think it crashed. I think it was taken down. Yes, I think it was taken down. You're right. There was clarification. But this clarification wasn't the original intention. The original intention was to do what they did. If you look at the history of Elon Musk and his acquisition of Twitter, the same subject line was used in his request for his employees to leave, a fork in the road. That was the subject line to this after-hours email that went out to the 2 million federal employees.
Yeah.
And you can probably do that a lot easier with a private company like Twitter, although there was plenty of times where Twitter was crashing after the acquisition, and there were a lot of tech issues because the plan with these, oligarchs running our country is just stop the programs now and fix it later. And they learned immediately, in less than a day, that you can't do that with 300 million American lives. This is not Twitter. You can go in, and that was screwed up. Twitter has never been the same. Most people left, and that's why websites like Blue Sky, are jumping off, and Threads and all the alternative social media. But you can't do that with American policies. I mean, federal funding affects everything we do.
Yeah.
Take a walk down Pearl Road, and who do you think's paying for that road construction? Does that mean that immediately stops? People don't realize the scale of this. So this, I heard some phrase, slash now, fix later, like what they did with Twitter, just won't work with American lives. So everyone will feel this. If it keeps going this way, there should be a recall election. Yeah. Every American should be furious. This is not a political issue. This is, can our country run?
It hasn't even ended with this. I mean, there was just an announcement. I don't even know if we ever had a chance to talk about this on the podcast. After being elected, President Trump advanced the nominee for commissioner of the Social Security. After the election, Frank Bisignano, and then he withdrew his nomination.
He did, which hasn't made the news yet. We only found out because, we see these legal updates and we're very close to the happenings, but it's not even in the news yet. I couldn't even find a single news article. It's in the Federal Register or wherever it's published.
Does that concern you about the accuracy of it if it's only in the Federal Register? Like, why has nobody, just 5 days ago, I found articles that said that Fiserv, which is the large financial services company that he was previously the CEO of, they announced a successor for him just 5 days ago. So clearly, what would happen between now and 5 days ago that they would that he would withdraw his nomination? Does it concern? Are we sure we're reading this right?
Well, I think we're definitely reading it right. I mean, we saw on a government webpage, the news, is going to report from these government web pages what happened. Maybe we'll learn. Look, why would he want this job? I mean, with the executive orders coming down, basically telling them to why would anybody want to do that? So maybe he had honor and said, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most thankless job ever. The last person that Trump appointed, Andrew Saul, also from the business community, couldn't do anything to help, and the employees vocally disliked him. The only person who's made change in our career is Martin O'Malley, the former commissioner, which made significant changes that made all of your lives better. The past relevant work change has changed the lives of millions of people immediately for the better, and it makes sense, and everyone agrees. But what they're asking now is, how do we make this worse? It's stunning. I used to be so careful around our clients talking about politics, because we started under the Obama administration.
Right.
You know, that election was my third year in law school, so I came into this profession with him as, you know, a brand new president.
There was an energy.
There was, but and there was a lot of dislike towards him, and I'd have to be very careful. But now I'm not. You know, I get emails every day. Where is my back pay? I called Social Security. I was on the phone for 2 hours. I can't get an appointment for 4 weeks. I mean, every day I'm getting emails like this, and I'm like, yep, and it's only going to get worse to the Trump administration. I'm not holding back. We have nothing to lose at this point, because that's a reality. And if people don't stand up, if people don't file these lawsuits, it'll crumble the system. I can't believe we're even having this conversation.
I think the part of everything that just scares me, concerns me, and it kind of goes back to our talk therapy at the beginning, when just the cavalier way that all of this was done. I don't know how much time was spent calculating or doing surveys to find out how many people would be likely to resign to that offer that was sent to them, which is very scary when, for example, Social Security operates large payment centers. Now, I would think that most payment center employees are actually in an office already. So they're probably less affected by this. But, you know, a big piece of legislation was just passed at the beginning of the year, the Social Security Fairness Act, which I don't think we've really spent a lot of time.
I think we did a lot on the windfall elimination provision.
I think at least since we were last on it, I think we spoke about how it had been passed by the Senate. It has now been signed into law. You know, at the very end, it was on January 5th by President Biden. Right. And what it's going to do is it's going to create over, I think, about 3 million people who Social Security is going to need to alter their benefits, recalculate. Who's going to do that?
Right.
That's not done by a computer. That's done by a human. Computers can help, but a human's got to be the one who monitors all of this to make sure it goes out. If, you know, 25% of Social Security's payment center workforce responds and says resign, how long is it going to take for people who were affected, who are now going to be receiving additional funds because of that change in the law to receive that money? How much more burden is falling on, you know, existing employees to just get the current payments out? Is it going to slow down when people are receiving money now? There's just so many unanswered questions, and I think that's really what we're scared about. What we're concerned about is the unknown, and it feels like there's so much unknown. Every single day, I open up my phone, and it feels like the world has changed.
Yeah.
And I don't personally disagree with everything that I'm seeing. I just wish that there was more clarity. I wish that we knew the path. And, you know, I don't think there's anybody who would say waste is bad. If we have a bunch of employees who are sitting around not doing anything, if we can spend 20% less to get the same output, that sounds like a good thing to do in any business. I personally am not of the belief that we should have a big government just for the purpose of keeping people employed. I think if we have a big government which is serving the people, which is enhancing our lives and making them better, I'm all for that. But I think that what they're really trying to eliminate is just people who are sitting around picking their rear ends all day instead of doing work. And we do know that there are people like that working. And I'm hoping that those are the people who see that email that they got yesterday and respond, resign, because, you know, even in our own business, we say this all the time. It's addition by subtraction. Sometimes, you know, making the Sometimes it's letting go of a client who's hard to help. Sometimes it's letting go of an employee who is bringing down other people around them. And so even though you think you're getting some work from them, really what they're doing is they're draining everybody else. Sure. And maybe that's the long-term plan here, but we need to know the plan.
And this is not some new plan. There has been an assault or attack on, quote, the administrative state for a very long time.
Yeah.
And the seeds have been planted and are now growing. I mean, take the decision overturning Chevron deference without going into the weeds. People need to understand that Congress passes laws, but agencies interpret those laws and figure out how to run the program. For instance, Social Security is an agency, and they write all these regulations and rules and rulings. There's no way Congress, as a body, can determine what is disabling from a heart condition.
Right.
They can't just, there's no cardiologist, on task that says, well, if your ejection fraction's at this number, you probably can't work. That's delegated to agencies who have experts who understand. And, our litigation practice is way more focused on these regulations than the laws.
Sure.
I mean, really everything we do is common law and regulations and rulings. That's what governs us. They want to eliminate that all. That's what they're trying to get rid of. And they're going to realize very quickly, you can't do that. The system is just too big. It's too complicated. There's a million things that we could talk about on this podcast today that Social Security does every day. And if you just cut it all out, the system will grind to a halt and people's real lives will be impacted. So it's really, they're getting their way of what they've wanted, this part of the country, this take down the administrative state, without understanding what the administrative state actually does. And of course, I don't think there's anybody that says we want federal workers just to have employees, but we need employees to uphold this social contract that we have. Isn't that what's supposed to make America different? I mean, part of this country wants everyone just to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, which is BS. I mean, everyone needs a hand. There's very few people out there that could ever do that. It's a ridiculous saying to begin with. And, we have a country that's designed to provide welfare.
Yeah. And
welfare has become a bad word. And it's a shame because how much welfare is provided to these corporations. I mean, where do we start? Where do we start? Where do we stop with this?
Right.
And that's why I'm angry, because I don't know what to think. I don't know what's going to happen. Did we ever think we'd see this many executive orders immediately? And the worst part is that I don't think Trump knows or even cares. I think he's surrounded himself with these people who want to execute this plan, what is it called? Project Vision 2025 or whatever it was that we all made fun of, but now we're seeing it in action. And I don't think he cares about anybody but himself, and they're going to quickly learn that our country will fall apart if this continues on the way it's going. Do you think federal employees are working very hard right now? They're freaking out. They're on their phones right now, texting their friends, looking for other jobs. I mean, what happened yesterday will immediately cause problems, and we'll probably start seeing it next week.
I don't know. I'm thinking about this the way that I think about, other problems, even just like parenting my kids or other circumstances where if people's response to, hey, we're going to, the email that went out to federal employees basically said, we're going to try and get lean and mean. If people's response to that, instead of saying, all right, how do I work meaner? How do I make myself useful here? Is to go and text their friends, is to just jump on the phone, start looking for other jobs. That's probably where the waste is. That's not what they did,
though. What's unprecedented about this, from what I understand, this has never happened before. The way agencies communicate with their employees is by agency. The federal government doesn't email 2 million employees at the same time. So these employees who work in this bureaucracy and understand the organizational chart, I think are rightfully scared and confused because this just does not happen. Somehow, Elon Musk and all these people who we don't even know their names, he's just the face of the billionaires, figured out a way to email 2 million people. And that's why it went in batches. So that's why you heard some federal employees got it at 5 p.m. and then 7 p.m. But that is scary. Like, I agree with what you're saying, but that's why they need to work with each agency and say, where can we trim the fat? where are the problems? Where do we need to put more money or more staff? But that's not what they're doing. They're just saying, hey, can like a bunch of you quit? Like, that would be great. And Twitter came to a crashing halt. I think we need to spend time looking at what happened to Twitter when they did that.
It's interesting because this conversation that we're having about how, the government is trying to make itself more efficient is something that we're having similar conversations here in the office. And how can we make ourselves more efficient? Now, our goal at the end of the path is not to have less people working here. It's to help our clients better using resources that are available. Certainly, we would love to be more efficient where we could add to, help more people without needing to add more employees to help them. But I'm thinking about this so many different ways because of how much time you and I have spent recently even talking about AI, automation, and how we can improve the delivery of services to people using technology. And so I guess I'm thinking about this from so many different angles.
We're a model for doing it right. The amount of objective data that our office collects on the way we do things is so impressive. We know the exact percentage of every required task, whether it's getting medical records, whether it's filing an appeal by this specific time, you name it. We objectively measure it. And when there's a problem, we move people from department to department. We either expand the department, we create a new department. We use objective data. We don't just say, well, you know what, we've got 50 employees. I think we could probably do it with 45. Do we, Michael, why don't you just email the firm and see if 5 people will take a layoff?
I haven't tried that yet.
But what if it's like one person in intake and one person in medical records?
Well, what scares me is if when they do things like that, it's just 5 people in intake and then we wake up tomorrow
and have no intake.
We don't have anybody to talk to new clients.
But if we are, first of all, intake, you're doing a fantastic job. But if
you are.
So great. All of them really are fantastic.
I'm sure they're all listening to us, too.
Are they? Oh, hey guys. But for real, if we realized that based on the number of calls we were getting, we didn't need 6 intake people, then you would either, you would make, I don't want to say what we would do, but an adjustment would be made on that specific fact.
Yeah.
Not just saying we need to get rid of too many employees. Maybe there are, let's take Social Security for instance. I first of all, they're so underfunded, I can't tell you a place where there might be too many people working. But let's just say that there were too many decision writers at the hearing level. Okay, well, maybe they can tell that. Maybe the decision writers are only writing 4 decisions a week when the government knows they could write 8, but there's just not enough work for them to write 8.
Yeah.
Well, then you take those decision writers and you either make a determination, are we going to release them from the workforce, or maybe we can use them here. That's why agency decisions need to be made at the agency level, because they understand the workload. These Doge folks, am I even saying that word right? The Department of Government Efficiency. Isn't that like some meme or something with like a dog? Like, I'm sorry, I don't spend enough time on the internet to totally understand this reference, but they can't just come in there and say we're going to cut them all. Like, it just doesn't. How are these people so successful but so dumb at the same time? Like, I don't get it.
Well, what I can tell is that things are not going to stop developing, that this is going to be an ongoing conversation, that at least for the next 4 years, we're going to have plenty to talk about.
And I hope that people know this passion that I have and you have. I mean, we're putting it into action. I mean,
yes.
But beyond just litigating cases, we're being loud. I can't tell you how many group conversations I have on my phone with different attorneys that I know that are saying, what are you doing? What are you telling your clients? How are you? And you've got your own.
Right.
We all do. So we are going to have to put ourselves on the front line, not only to win cases, but to preserve the system that needs to be there for the welfare of our country.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be an ongoing issue, and I'm excited to keep the conversation going with Andrew. As always, it's fun to hang out with you here at Triple D Podcast Bonus Bytes.
Thanks for listening to Bonus Bytes, a mini episode of the Triple D Podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe, and tune in next week for more disability news and headlines.